Welcome to this Spirit Gathering teleconference. Today is May 21st, 2013, and my name is Amy Skezas. Our topic tonight is Caring for Souls, Part 2, Receiving Soul Care. And we're so glad you've joined us. We're recording this call so that people who could not be here tonight can listen in. Please press either your phone's mute button or *6 to mute your line to keep the phone quiet. Tonight we're going to meet as a conversation council, which means you can speak at any time. We're not following any formal order like a talking stick order. The only thing to concern yourself about is just make sure that the current speaker is finished before you begin. And you can make it easier for everyone else by when you're talking and you're finished, say something like, I'm done or I'm finished, so that people know that they can then step in. We're using a pure spirit circle style tonight, and one of the great features of a pure spirit style circle is the pause. And the pause is a resource to open space, to reflect on what's unfolding with us in the moment. Daz Dillon has agreed to serve as the guardian, and she'll call for a pause if it's needed. And any of you are also free to ask for a pause if you feel it's needed. When a pause is called, we stop talking and just breathe, maybe 3 breaths. The person who called for the pause explains the reason, and then we take another 3-breath pause, and then we resume discussion. The timekeeper tonight is Diane Lyon, and she'll let us know when 10 minutes have passed, every 10 minutes, while we're having our discussion to help remind us to be aware of the time. So let's take a moment now to get settled, to center ourselves, to let go of the events of this day, to begin to enter the deeper, sacred space within ourselves. Now let us imagine that we are joining together, sacred heart to sacred heart, with every other person on this call right now. Now let us imagine we're joining together in a circle with a light or a flame or a fire in the center. Imagine a spoke of light or fire coming from the center of the circle to your heart. And for every person on the call tonight, a spoke of light coming to their heart. And the same for every person listening in afterwards. And now we're connected, sacred heart to sacred heart. Now let us set our intentions. We listen to one another with compassion and curiosity. We ask for what we need, and we offer what we can. We deepen our connection with one another and the divine. May this sharing serve us, our communities, and the planet. And so it is. Tonight, I'll open with a reading, a poem. This poem is found in a book of sacred poems from many cultures called The Soul is Here for Its Own Joy. And it's edited by Robert Bly. Book. And the title of the poem is My Soul Asleep? And the author is Antonio Machado. Is my soul asleep? Have those beehives that work in the night stopped? And the water wheel of thought, Is it going around now, cups empty, carrying only shadows? No, my soul is not asleep. It is awake, wide awake. It neither sleeps nor dreams, but watches, its eyes wide open on far-off things, and listens at the shores of the great silence. So, this topic of soul care, receiving soul care, is a companion topic to the last Spirit Gathering topic of giving soul care. What got me started wondering about these things is that I'm still working diligently on the seminary materials and the structures, and pretty soon I will have a lot more information well organized to allow people to see, to look at, and comment on. And I was thinking a lot about ministry and what ministry means in our faith community and tradition. And because we're a metaphysical spiritual organization and we don't have a lot of the ordinary mainstream trappings of being clergy, we don't usually have a pulpit and congregation model. We don't usually wear vestments. We don't have some kind of a big hierarchy or a diocese. We're not in a bricks and mortar building with pews and an altar. We're out doing our thing, caring for people in a spiritual way, in a spiritual metaphysical way, in a lot of different settings, a lot of different ways of expressing. And yet there is something that holds us all together. And in meditating and reflecting on that, I kept coming back to this idea of pastoral care and this idea that clergy are people who care for other people in a soulful way, or who care for souls. A doctor cares for a patient's body and treats disease, and a teacher often cares for a student's mind and opens up new thinking, new ideas. And a clergy person cares for souls. So what does that mean? And so I thought, well, there are lots of different ways of understanding that word soul, and there are lots of different organizational schemes that people, or hierarchies that people lay out that include that word soul. But the easiest way to understand what it means for people in our community would just be to ask for people to tell their stories about what they enjoy about caring for souls or questions they have about caring for souls. So that was last month's conversation. And then I started thinking, when it came time to set the topic for this month's conversation and gathering, well, you know, there's giving and then there's receiving. And I wonder what it's like for people who give care, pastoral care, care for souls. I wonder what inspired them to get into that. It had to be something that touched them. I'm imagining, as I'm sitting here talking to myself and thinking about it, touched them at the soul level. There must have been some story or way or longing for something of receiving care as a soul. That was my thinking. So I thought, I should ask. And so that topic tonight is, what is your question, or what is your story about receiving soul care? And we can receive soul care in a lot of different ways. I feel personally that I get a tremendous amount of soul care from my connection with nature and with animals and plants and crystals. It puts me into contact with the part of myself that is, in my perception, bigger than my little self, what I call my little self, my persona in this lifetime. And I personally feel, in my belief and experience, in my subtle energy experience, that this persona, this little self that's me, that I think of as me, the ego-identified me on the earth plane, comes from that soul place and will return to it when this life is over. So when I'm all gummed up and, agitated or not in a state of harmony, if I go out and I walk on the hill with the sheepdogs, I am always feeling better by the time I come back in, and I'm always feeling grounded and in touch with that feeling of home inside myself, that feeling of the place I've come from and a place I'll gladly go back to when it's time to leave my earthly life as this persona. And I also find this place through quiet reflection and this state of being, or this part of myself, my bigger self, sometimes by working with my spiritual teacher, doing a practice called Light Body, practice called Flow Alignment Connection, or Physical Atomic Evolution, or Running the Golden Body. All these subtle energy skills that I have developed, that I practice, I find that they get me in touch with this larger part of myself and bring nourishment to me. And I feel like that is caring for my soul, because I feel as if part of my care for it and receiving care from it, it's the same thing. It's being conscious, aware of it. If I just open that gateway, that little thread of energy connecting me with it, then energy flows back and forth, and I feel like it's just poor model, but if you imagine that it's somehow separate from me, which I don't think it is, if you imagine there are two of us, my soul and me, which I don't think is really accurate, but it's hard to language, I feel like both of us get cared for when that channel is open and energy can flow back and forth. And that when I go out and walk with the dogs, it brings me into some kind of state of awareness that allows that to happen. I think part of it is because the dogs have such strong spirit. They're a really primordial, ancient breed of livestock guardian dogs, and they're just in touch with that level of reality, I feel like, all the time. So I go out, and by being with them, I'm caring for my soul. I'm caring for myself. And my cats are a lot more neurotic, but I get some of this from them too. When they're not arguing with each other and being petty and catty and having a lot of sibling rivalry and drama, when they're in that deep state that they get into, they can take me right into that deep state too, my own deep state, different from theirs. So that's me, and I'm really interested in hearing your story or your question on this topic. So when you're ready to talk, unmute your phone, we're in conversation council, and I'm done.
14 minutes has passed.
It's Judy, and I would like a turn. It's very interesting that I was reading the email from you, Amy, the other day, and with everything that I've had going on with my mom and Larry's mom, but mostly mine, because losing her loved one after 68 years has taken its toll. But the other day, the doctor walked in, and I don't know how to explain this, because if any of you haven't done the assisted living nursing home thing, I can't, but I can try. He walked into he was walking through the dining room, and he's the doctor. Now, these people are all in their 80s and 90s, and several of them are 100. And so in that group of people, a doctor is right up there next to God. They don't put their pants on one leg at a time like all of us. And he walked in and said my name as I was going through the dining room like I do. And my reward from the people is eye contact and a smile when I walk through the dining room and stop at each table. And that's part of my ministry right now, is doing that. And he called my name and opened his arms wide, and I went for the hug. And he took care of me. And the whole room stopped. When I was a young girl, I was the oldest of 5. And I don't have to tell you, a home with 5 kids and dogs and cats is chaos. And I had this one spot that I went to, because at the time our home had been built next to an apple orchard. And I found this one spot, and there was one day, and I spoke of this at my ordination. There was one day when I was laying on my little grassy spot and looking up into the trees, and I became so aware of the little self and the big self. Although I love the way you put that, Amy, I have never done that. I seem to always have my little self by the collar, looking at her going, "What are you doing?" But I became so aware of that there was so much more, and that I had this burning desire to share that feeling. And I said to my granddaughter, who is going to turn 25 next week, just a couple of years ago, she was very ingrained in, she was going to convert everybody, and she was talking and talking and talking to people about, no, this is the way. You have to go. This is how you have to go. This is how you have to do it. And I went to see her, and I sat with her, and I said, sometimes keeping your mouth shut and relying on your actions is going to speak far greater wisdom and knowledge than rattling your mouth. And a year later, she repeated those words to me and thanked me for saying that to her, because it had an impact on her. And from a child, I watched other family members, meaning cousins and aunts and uncles, with that mindset of I have to convert you, and my way is the only way, and then watching their actions, and their actions were not matching their words. And I realized then that I had to make my actions speak for me and how I felt. And that's what brought me here. And these last couple of years have been an amazing journey. But since 2002, when I was ordained, everything has been an amazing journey. well, since it's 1999. It's all been a great journey, but because of that niggling thing as a young girl, and then having another epiphany and figuring out where I needed to go to achieve what I felt when I was younger, that's how I got here. And then to walk outside and be absolutely enveloped in all of the absolutely glorious smells in my yard because of the fruit of my labors, when I get all wiggy and have to get in the dirt, my husband will even say to me, Jude, just go outside and get in the dirt, because he has figured that out. So yesterday I came home, and it had been just one of those days, and I went outside, and it was a half an hour. But every place I went in my yard, I was in this absolutely, positively blissful state, like I was being swirled in with what I was looking at and what I was smelling and the birds that I was hearing, and all of a sudden I was just part of it all. And that was my big self. And that it's amazing, and I'm so thankful that I have the awareness to know what's happening and to be thankful for it and to be aware of it. And I'm done.
22 minutes has passed. This is Diane. I'll speak. I guess the part of the introduction that is calling me to speak into is what brought me to the energy work and the work of connecting with higher self and soul and beyond. And that was in 1994 when I had been working at a job for 12 years, and I was really into the job and did a good job and really liked what I was doing. And then one day I didn't, and I could hardly I could almost hardly be in the environment and in the work, and it was so ready to be for me to move on, and I didn't know to what, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure that out. But one of the pieces that helped in that figuring out was to connect with, at the time, Rose Light, which is Amy's company, and that was in the fall of '94. And it was kind of that coming home and going into those bigger spaces and exploring so much that was so big and so expansive, and helping me work through and figure out, what more of myself, a greater exploration of myself. And that piece between that I heard both of you mention of, that little self and then something bigger and a stream of life force or something that's in the middle of that one can connect into and become bigger and more spacious and more whole. And it's that somehow that integration, and there's something too about that observer self that was in that poem that you read, Amy, about that's what the soul is doing. It's here to experience joy, and there's something about that observer self that seems to be really important to nurture and develop, to somehow create something even more magnificent. And I don't quite know what that is, but that it adds an additional element to the sense of being one in nature and within oneself and with the all that is. And I'm not really quite sure what else to say about that, but that just, for me at this point, seems really important and rich in the exploration. And I've really appreciated times when there's just this golden energy. It's happened in 2 times especially that were really very powerful, both with trees, where they were golden and just pulsing. And again, as the observer of that, connected to that and observing at the same time was, and being in this amazing oneness was quite something. And just pulsating, and that I think that's there all the time, whether it's a tree or a dog or another person. It's that combination of the awareness and the observer self and higher consciousness of all of it.
So this is Bev, and I would just like to suggest we just take a moment to receive that transmission. Just some lovely energy there that you were transmitting.
Oh, thank you.
Or plugging us into. To receive that nourishment.
Diane, are you complete now?
Yes, I'm complete, and 30 minutes has passed.
Well, I'd like to offer a couple of things from my perspective. Well, kind of to begin, the big questions of giving and receiving kind of didn't ever really cross my mind until later in my experience after doing training as an energy worker. It became kind of directly self-evident to me in my own direct experience And every time I gave a session, I also got one. And the implication is that there's a whole environment of energy and consciousness that's working all at the same time. You know, if one looks at the video of a session, one's going to see a client and a practitioner there, and whenever the client lays on the table or however the session is done, the practitioner seems to be doing operations and movements and whatever it looks like, it's there. But at the same time, there's this entire cast of energy and consciousness and spirits and guides and elementals and all there at the same time, working to, in effect, fulfill the intentions of what it is the client sought and desired. But at the same time that the practitioner, me, who was doing that session, was there working with the client, it's also the case that the energy that's working for them is also working through me and therefore also, in a sense, for me. So in some sense, you know, it's just kind of a matter of labeling now. Which one is this is a giving and which one is receiving, because in some sense what's being given to the client I'm also receiving. So, and somewhat later, it was also the case that I got, sort of, you might say, a little inner message. I don't really ever get very many of those. I can kind of name three. And this was message number 3. One could say it's from the intuition or the soul or whatever it is, the divine within me. And that message was, there's nothing that's not my blessing. And this has taken on, in the living with that over the years, it's kind of, I mean, to take it literally, there's nothing, absolutely nothing, whether it's the cat who gives me kisses or the dog who bit me on the hand today or being in session with someone or the tornadoes in Oklahoma or the tsunamis in the Pacific or the revolutions of the cosmos. There's just nothing that's not the divine in action. And once again, at least for me, it's a matter of labeling now. Is this a giving or is this a receiving? The divine is always there, always omnipresent, giving, receiving, being. That's the way it seems like it's for me. And the invitation for me is to be in touch with that. Maybe in the sense of the final words of the poem that Amy read at the beginning about that place of infinite stillness or divine silence. And that's where I'm at right now. And I'm complete.
Oh, this is Bev. And one other thought that I had too, the idea of soul care. Amy had started off or no, it wasn't Amy. Well, anyway, there was a discussion of physicians, and I work in healthcare, and it occurred to me that a physician can do their work, or a nurse, or whatever, and to a degree, not take that good a care of themselves, really. And I'm sure that happens all the time. I mean, our bodies will give out eventually, but it's not necessarily like a prerequisite. But with ministry, with being soul caregivers, it's really different. And if you are not receiving soul care, if you are not walking that walk, it's going to be directly reflected in the quality of presence you bring, and the quality of your healing presence. For the individual who thinks that they don't need it, they're going to bring a slightly tainted, superior kind of attitude, or something that diminishes their healing presence. And there's just all different ways in which, there's none of us who don't need this. And if we don't have the humility to see it, or the courage to see it, or whatever it is that's in our way for it, our capacity to help will be limited by that. Certainly not stopped entirely, but there will be limits, and we may put stumbling blocks in people's way unintentionally. It's kind of a prerequisite for our jobs. But it's a wonderful thing doing healing work, because there really is it is giving and receiving at the same moment. There is no separation there. So I am done.
There's 12 minutes left in our session.
Amy? I'm really enjoying energy that's coming forth from us and among us as we speak about this. And it's bringing to my awareness that this is one of the things that I really value and cherish about our community, is that I am more able to know myself and care for myself as a soul by being in relationship with you and with others in our community and with the energy of this organization itself than if I weren't. If I'm in a more mundane level of awareness, not focused on spiritual things, I still try, and I think I succeed pretty well in being a good person and, having a moral life, an ethical life, and being true to my principles and walking my talk. But I don't always reside in an expanded state of awareness. I can become entangled and shut down and small sometimes. And I feel like there's so much value for me in being in a community of other mystics, or whatever word we would use to describe ourselves, metaphysical seekers, energy workers, spiritual helping professionals, carers of souls, I enjoy this energy. It's one of the things I enjoy most about life. And so I'm just so deeply grateful for you in my life and for this organization. I'm done.
I'm also very grateful for all the energy and transmission that happens in this space. It's quite something, and very sacred and powerful and delicious. And I'm also very grateful. I was struck, I think it was Judy talking about a grandchild who, it was kind of my way or the highway, evangelizing on something. And I was thinking about how in times of, where am I going, or what's next for me, or ultimately who am I at right now, is latching on to things, because it's like floating in the water and having an inner tube or a life vest, something to hang on to. And I've observed, again, the observer self has kind of observed that within myself, and I was relating to that in terms of, really hanging on to, and when one is more blended with the higher self and the soul, and I guess a maturation process and that blending happens, then one comes at things and is just that state, and so the actions do speak louder than the words in the beingness of how one interacts, and it receives open arms that want to hug at a nursing facility. It's there's something just really delicious about that blended little self and higher self, again with that that energy that just is like glue, but not strong glue, flexible glue that gels and holds that together so that they can show up together, and in that togetherness be so much more present and powerful and alive and essence, like the essence self can express. Just like a dog or a baby. It's just so pure of who and what all parts of that being are. So I'm complete and finished. And there's 6 minutes left.
Thanks. Thanks for that, Diane, with the time, and everyone with your comments. Is there anything else that anyone would like to say or ask before we move into the closing? Check out and then the closing.
It's Judy again. I just have one more thing. Today I put my feet on the floor and I feel like I have climbed a mountain, moved barriers, did whatever I needed to do today to be here tonight because I needed all of you. So I appreciate you all, and I'm so glad that we had this time and that I climbed the mountain. So thanks.
Okay. Well, that's a good segue into the checkout, which I invite you each to comment on what stays in your heart and your mind as we leave our circle. What are you checking out with tonight?
So this is Bev, and I'm checking out with nourishment. I feel nourished and soft and relaxed and peaceful. So thank you.
And I'm checking out with definitely nourishment and gratitude.
I'm checking out with joy in my heart. And gratitude.
I'm checking out with joy and a sense of being in the right place at the right time. Okay. Any more checkouts? If not, we'll go to the closing. Okay. Thank you for joining us for the Spirit Gathering teleconference. This call may be archived as an MP3 at www.tzaddi.org. Phone access to the recording of this call is available until next month's call. For playback of the recording, dial 712-432-1085, access code 990322#. We hope you'll join us for our next Spirit Gathering. It's on the third Tuesday of the month, every month. And next month will be June 18th, 2013. These calls are hosted by Tzaddi, a spiritual educational organization founded in California as a church in 1964. Tzaddi welcomes, nurtures, and supports people in celebrating and more directly experiencing their relationship with the loving presence of the divine. Our programs are open to people of any race, color, or national or ethnic origin. Please visit www.tzaddi.org to learn more. We'll close now with thanks, a blessing. Thanks to Tzaddi founders Amy Keys and Dorothy Blackman, who started our metaphysical organization. Thanks to all of you who've been a part of our community tonight. And thanks to the Divine, who supports us always, even when we're not aware of it. And we'll close with a short blessing. Thomas, would you be willing to do the blessing?
Well, we can try. May the divine bless you and keep you. May the divine make its face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the divine uplift its countenance within you and give you peace.
Thank you for this evening and all of your blessings. Wish you have a very, very safe and happy night. Good night.
Good night.
No.
Thank you, you too.